In every neighborhood, behind doors that appear ordinary, there are stories no one imagines until they explode into tragedy. Tonight, we're stepping into a case that begins with what looks like a routine life. A husband, a wife, 2 children, a rented home in Jacksonville, Florida. But what unfolded on one summer evening in June of 2020 would shatter that ordinary image forever, exposing secrets, lies, and a deadly decision that left one woman dead and another family broken. This is not a story about strangers colliding in random violence. It's about choices, deception, and the fatal cost of trying to keep a double life hidden. So settle in, because from the very first moment to the final verdict, this is a case that grips you, unsettles you, and forces you to wonder, how far will someone go to protect a lie? In June 2020, 37-year-old Leonard Whitaker lived what seemed, at least from the outside, like a steady life. He worked as a warehouse supervisor for a freight company, a man his coworkers called punctual and quiet, reserved, the type who showed up on time, did his job, and went home without drawing attention. He lived with his wife, Monique, and their 2 children, ages 9 and 12. The family rented a single-family home in a modest residential neighborhood of Jacksonville. Neighbor knew them as polite, private people. On the surface, Leonard's life looked typical, predictable, maybe even enviably stable. But appearances can be deceiving. For about 8 months leading up to that summer, Leonard was carrying a secret that not even his closest friends or his wife knew about. Through a dating app, he met 29-year-old Dominique Price. Dominique was a trans woman living across town in a small apartment complex. She supported herself with retail work and sometimes babysat for neighbors' kids to make ends meet. Those who knew her described her as warm, funny, and searching for stability. She wanted companionship, a sense of belonging, and she believed she'd found that in Leonard. When their relationship began, Leonard laid down strict rules. Dominique couldn't visit his home. She couldn't meet his friends. Their time together was limited to her apartment or the occasional motel room. He told her he lived alone, that he worked long hours, and that he didn't have close relatives nearby. At first, Dominique accepted these boundaries. Maybe she even convinced herself it was about privacy or caution. But as months passed, her patience thinned. She wanted more. She wanted acknowledgement. She wanted honesty. And she wanted Leonard to step out of the shadows with her. The secrecy, once tolerable, began to feel like betrayal. At home, Monique started to notice things too. Leonard, once casual with his phone, now kept it locked. He came home later than usual, with explanations that didn't always add up, working late, running errands. He was more irritable, less present. When Monique questioned him, he became defensive. She confided in her sister that she suspected an affair, though she had no proof. To her, it was a gnawing suspicion. To Leonard, it was a storm gathering on the horizon. By early June, the relationship with Dominique had grown strained. She was tired of being hidden. She sent Leonard message after message, called him over 30 times in a single week. She told him, "You can't just disappear on me." She asked again and again to see his home, to be part of his real life. Leonard, instead of facing her, chose to cut her off. He blocked her number. To Dominique, it felt like abandonment and betrayal. To Leonard, it was an attempt to erase a complication that threatened his carefully divided world. But complications don't disappear so easily. On the evening of June 19th, 2020, the Whitaker family's routine seemed typical. Leonard was outside grilling. Monique was preparing food in the kitchen, and the kids were playing on the porch. The hum of an ordinary summer evening. But just as dusk fell, there was a knock at the front door. Monique answered, and standing there was a tall woman with braided hair. Her expression was tense, but calm. She asked directly, "I'm looking for Leonard." In that instant, Leonard saw what he had feared most. Dominique standing on the threshold of the life he'd hidden from her. His face changed. Panic set in. Dominique didn't raise her voice. She didn't push past the door. She simply confronted him. She demanded to know why he'd lied, why he had hidden his wife, his children, his entire reality. For Monique, the moment was disorienting. She looked from Dominique to her husband, trying to make sense of the puzzle pieces falling into place right there in her living room. But for Leonard, The fear wasn't confusion, it was exposure. And within seconds, the tension erupted into violence. Leonard moved toward a drawer near the doorway and pulled out a handgun he kept stored there. Dominique froze, startled. Before she could move, Leonard fired. The bullet tore into her shoulder at close range. Screaming in pain, she turned and tried to run, stumbling toward the street. Monique shouted at her husband to stop, but he didn't. Leonard followed her outside. At the curb, he raised the gun again and fired a second shot. This time the bullet struck Dominique in the back. She collapsed on the grass. Neighbors rushed out of their homes, drawn by the sound of gunfire. Monique pulled her children inside, crying, and called 911. Her voice on the call was panicked, urgent. Her husband had shot a woman outside their house. Within minutes, Jacksonville Sheriff's deputies arrived. They found Dominique lying face down on the lawn. Paramedics tried desperately to save her, but the wounds were fatal. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Just a few feet away, Leonard stood with his hands raised, the still warm .40 caliber pistol lying on the driveway. His wife clutched their children on the porch, tears streaming down her face. The crime scene told a clear story. 2 shell casings. A trail of blood from the doorway to the curb. Dominique's purse spilled open in the grass, with her phone, ID, and a folded note inside. Leonard's workplace address, circled in pen. It was evidence of her search for answers, her determination to find him when he shut her out. Leonard was arrested on the spot and taken to the precinct. During questioning, he tried to frame the shooting as self-defense. He claimed Dominique forced her way inside and threatened him in front of his family. He said he fired out of fear. He admitted to an affair, but minimized it, calling her unstable, saying she harassed him with calls and wouldn't leave him alone. But investigators weren't buying it. They spoke to Monique, who gave them a very different version of events. She said Dominique knocked politely, asked for Leonard by name, and stayed calm until Leonard appeared. She testified that her husband became panicked, grabbed the gun without provocation, and shot Dominique as she tried to turn away. Forensic evidence backed her up. The autopsy showed the first bullet entered from the front, close range, in her shoulder. The second entered her back at a downward angle, consistent with her fleeing as he chased her. Neighbors reported hearing a first shot, then silence, then a second shot outside. A nearby security camera, partially blocked by trees, captured Dominique running from the doorway with Leonard close behind. A muzzle flash confirmed that the fatal shot was fired as she fled. Detectives combed through Dominique's phone and uncovered months of messages. They saw Leonard promising he lived alone, that he would bring her over eventually, that she just had to be patient. They saw her messages pleading for honesty. I can't be a secret forever. They saw the unanswered texts in the days before her death, the last one reading, "You can't just disappear on me." These weren't the messages of an aggressor, but of someone desperate for truth. Leonard had cut her off, but Dominique wanted closure. That's why she came to his door. She wanted honesty, not violence. The prosecution built a meticulous case. They argued Leonard didn't act out of fear, but out of desperation to silence someone who threatened to expose his secret. In court, the medical examiner testified plainly. This was not defense. This was pursuit. Monique, despite the emotional toll, told the jury what she saw. That Dominique arrived calmly, that Leonard escalated. Friends of Dominique spoke about her hopes, her desire for a real relationship, and her heartbreak when Leonard stopped responding. Jurors saw the text messages, the note with his address, the surveillance video. Piece by piece, a picture came together. This wasn't a break-in. It wasn't self-defense. It was a man choosing violence to keep his double life intact. During cross-examination, the prosecutor asked Leonard one question that hung heavy in the courtroom. She was running away when you fired the second shot. Who was in danger then? Leonard had no answer. Silence filled the room. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury needed less than a day to decide. Guilty on all charges, second-degree murder, aggravated assault, and use of a firearm in the commission of a felony. The judge, during sentencing, told Leonard directly that his actions were cowardly and rooted in deceit. He reminded him that Dominique Price's life was cut short not because of unavoidable danger, but because Leonard chose to protect his lies at any cost. The sentence, 40 years in state prison, with parole eligibility only after 30. For Dominique's friends, the verdict was some measure of justice, though it could never bring her back. For Monique and her children, it meant the end of the life they thought they had, and the burden of carrying forward with the truth of what happened on that June night. A family destroyed, a woman's life stolen, and a man left to spend decades behind bars, haunted by the cost of his choices. Cases like this leave us with difficult questions. How much of the life we present to others is real? How much is constructed from secrets, from lies, from things we hope never come to light? And when those secrets threaten to surface, how far will someone go to keep them buried? In Leonard Whitaker's case, the answer was fatal. And in the end, no lie, no matter how carefully maintained, could save him from the truth. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. These cases are never easy, but they remind us of the fragile line between ordinary lives and devastating choices. If this story gripped you, stay with us for more cases that explore how hidden lives and dark decisions lead to tragic consequences. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and never forget, the truth always finds a way out.